History has seen many revolutionaries, but almost none, who walked out of 27 years in prison without hatred in their heart. Forgiveness doesn't make you weak. It proves that you are strong enough to not need to win through hatred. And this is the series on the greatest figures worth learning from and aspiring to. Today, let's look back at the life of Nelson Mandela, the man who endured suffering without allowing it to turn into hatred. Some people are born destined to live a peaceful life, but there are also those born to step into the darkness, only to become the light for millions of others. He was born on July 18th, 1918. It was a time when the color of your skin could dictate a person's entire destiny. A ruthless system called apartheid didn't just divide people, it erased them. If you were black, you were pushed to the margins of society, controlled at every step, treated as a second-class citizen. In your very own homeland, Mandela grew up amidst that injustice. He saw the pain corrode an entire nation. He saw children born and taught that they were inferior to others. But here is the twist. The injustice didn't turn him into a man filled with hate. It turned him into a lawyer. From a cattle-herding boy in a rural village, Mandela became one of the few black people to study law at that time. He began to understand a terrifying truth. Silence in the face of injustice is exactly how evil survives longer. And so, he stood up. He stopped being a witness to injustice and became its enemy. He joined the resistance, organized protests, spoke against a system built on humiliation and fear. But what he got in return was violence, arrests, torture, the government opening fire on civilians. Mandela understood that the road ahead would cost him everything: his family, his career, his youth, even his life. But there was one thing he feared more than death: living without daring to defend what is right. And then the worst finally happened. In 1964, Mandela was sentenced to life in prison. He was sent to Robben Island, a brutal limestone quarry, surrounded by the freezing Atlantic Ocean. There, Mandela lived in a tiny 8 by 7 foot cell, a thin mat on the floor, a bucket for a toilet. At night, the freezing wind from the Atlantic crept through the iron bars of his cell, and every morning, the deafening clank of heavy metal doors reminded him that he belonged to the state. Every day, he was forced to break rocks under the scorching sun. The blinding glare of the limestone permanently damaged his eyesight. He was allowed one visitor a year, one censored letter every 6 months. The wardens tried to break him. They wanted to crush his will, make him believe that he was forgotten, and it almost worked. He wasn't an untouchable superhero. There were nights in that freezing cell when he broke down, when even Mandela wondered whether freedom would ever come, if he would just die as a forgotten number in that concrete box. 27 years. But even inside prison, Mandela refused to let his mind be imprisoned. The inmates secretly taught one another history, politics, and law. Robben Island slowly became known as the University of Robben Island. That much time in prison should have created a monster. Instead, it created a man capable of forgiving a nation. Most people would turn bitter. Most people would plot revenge. But Mandela did something unexpected. He studied his enemy. He learned Afrikaans, the language of his jailers. He read their poetry. He learned their history. He didn't do this to mock them. He did it to understand them. Because Mandela realized a painful truth. Hatred is also a prison. If you let resentment control you, then even when you are freed, you remain a prisoner. In 1985, the government offered Mandela freedom. But there was a condition. He had to abandon the struggle against apartheid. Mandela refused, because he understood something terrifying. A man who trades his principles for freedom is never truly free. And then, after nearly 3 decades, The world outside began to collapse under international pressure. The government feared Mandela so much, they locked him away in a cage. But prison didn't silence him. It turned him into a global symbol. The prison guards feared Mandela, not because he was violent, but because they could not break him. In 1990, Mandela was released, 27 years, and still, he walked out smiling. No rage, no call for revenge. Millions watched the prison gates, wondering what kind of man would emerge after 27 years. South Africa was standing on the brink of civil war. Black people were furious after centuries of oppression. White people lived in fear, terrified they would be massacred. Just one wrong word of incitement, and the whole nation would drown in blood. Many expected him to call for vengeance, and after decades in a cell, no one would have blamed him. But Mandela made the whole world fall silent. When I walked out of the prison doors, if I still carried hatred, I would not truly be free. He didn't call for war. He spoke of reconciliation. He didn't just fight to liberate black people. He fought to liberate white people from the prison of their own prejudice. His enemies expected rage. Instead, they met a man who welcomed them with calmness and dignity. In 1994, South Africa held its first fully democratic election, and Nelson Mandela, the man once labeled a terrorist, became the first black president of South Africa. But winning the election wasn't his greatest victory. His greatest victory was what he did next. In 1995, South Africa hosted the Rugby World Cup. Rugby was traditionally a white sport, a symbol of the apartheid regime. Many black South Africans wanted to crush the team, destroy its legacy. But Mandela saw an opportunity. On the day of the final match, he walked onto the field, wearing the green and gold jersey of the Springboks, the very team that once represented his oppressors. The stadium, filled with 62,000 mostly white fans, fell completely silent. And then, slowly, they began to chant, "Nelson, Nelson, Nelson." In that single moment, through a game of rugby, he united a divided nation. He proved that true strength doesn't lie in forcing others to their knees, but in lifting others to stand alongside you. Mandela later said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." And perhaps that was exactly who he became. On December 5th, 2013, Nelson Mandela passed away. His body died in 2013, but the world he changed never will. His life leaves us with an uncomfortable truth. We live in an age where outrage spreads faster than understanding, where people destroy each other with words from behind glowing screens, where revenge is easy and anger goes viral. But Mandela's life reminds us that hatred still imprisons the person carrying it. He chose the hardest path. The men who imprisoned him thought they were burying a threat. They never realized they were forging a legend. Apartheid stole 27 years of Mandela's life. But Mandela destroyed something too, the world's belief that hatred is stronger than love. And that is why history remembers him. Not because he survived prison, not because he became president, but because he walked out of it without hatred in his heart.